All right, welcome to the fifth installment of Double-Barrel Non-Duality. And today, our special guest is Zubin, Dr. Zubin Damania, also known as ZDoggMD.
How to do, y'all? I had to unmute myself. I'm not used to all the logistics.
Yeah. Hey, good. I'm glad you're here. Appreciate it. Thanks for your support of Double Barrel. And yeah, we'll just hit some questions, and he and I will tag team it. Maybe we'll take turns. Maybe we'll both answer, depending on what comes up. So let's start with anyone who has a question. Actually, if you would raise your hand is the easiest way for me. And that is underneath on the screen. There's a thing that says reactions. There's a little arrow next to reactions, and you can click your little hand up thing there, and your hand will go up, and I'll see it, and then I'll call you if you want to do that. Okay, cool. Let's start with Paul.
Yeah, a little bit nervous. Hello.
Hey.
Thank you for all that you do. I thought, because I've been pretty disoriented in this whole process for a while, which I think is probably normal, but so I thought I'd just very quickly explain a little bit what's happening, and maybe you can tell me if I'm overlooking something, or if you have a tip for me or something. I knew about awakening for quite some years. I listened to Adyashanti and stuff like that. And then about 1.5 years ago, it kind of hit me that I wanted it to happen now. And I got serious. It's actually when you and Zubin had your interview that I saw. For some reason, that just clicked it in. And then I did a bunch of self-inquiry, and with that came up a lot of emotions. And the last 1.5 years has been a lot of emotion work as well. And then last summer I was at a spiritual retreat from a German spiritual teacher. And I had, I don't know if it was a glimpse or an awakening, but for a couple of days I walked around with a sense of kind of being, loving awareness that was located in me, but I couldn't find anything, and it was just this kind of loving awareness in there. And then about after 3 days, kind of the thoughts kind of came in again, and it was pretty, I guess, mind identified again. And then I just kind of kept going, and I feel like these days I'm a little bit alternating between, at times, feeling this sense of that I'm almost this like unknown, or like this kind of like pretty beautiful open, I guess, awareness thing, which does feel it's somewhere in my body. But when I can't find where it's located, but that it's just that sense. And then it kind of can switch to, like, for instance, these last couple of days, I was feeling my belly a lot more, and there's been a lot of emotions in there. And then when in the emotional process, it gets a little bit muddied, and I'm just in emotions, let's say. And and I have some sense that the process is just happening, and I think it's it's kind of happening on itself is maybe a bit too much to say, but it's not, I don't feel like I can screw it up or anything like that. So I guess in short, that's the best way I can describe.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Zubin, do you have anything to say?
Just a first impression, which is I feel like you're in such a good place. Like you have such insight into your own experience. Like whenever you talk, you're pointing at what you're experiencing, whether it's this sense of emotion in the belly or the confusion of that, or that sense of loving awareness, and then pointing back to the apparent sense of contraction that can happen back and forth. So I'll just say it's very familiar to me what you're pointing at.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the same thing. You're in a good place. It does sound like there was some shift in identity there that happened, whether it was right in that moment you're identifying in the retreat or after or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It sort of feels that way to me. And I wouldn't really modify any sort of practice recommendation based on that being true or not. It doesn't matter at this point in the way you're moving. I would say you are in a good place, and it is a natural process, actually, and it is unfolding on its own. And it will continue to unfold. That's the one thing I want to say is we can sort of conceptualize and sort of reify this idea that there's nothing to do. to where that becomes what you're doing. It becomes like a hesitation tone and almost a belief that there is nothing to do. So you tend to be a little avoidant of emotion and stuff. You don't sound like that, but that's a potential pitfall. And there are a lot of like I don't know what you'd say, like contemporary teachers that sort of point that way. And that can be a little bit of a pitfall. So it's a bit of a precarious place where it is unfolding. It is a natural process, but there has to be some acknowledgement that there are habituated tendencies that have a lot of momentum, and they've been in place a long time, and they don't stop overnight. And so what you can really do is show up. What you can do is be willing to inquire when it feels authentic and relevant to inquire. And it can be things like, what am I feeling right now? What am I avoiding right now? If there's an intense contraction, you have some suspicion that there's something you don't want to see or look at or feel, that's when a little bit more active inquiry is much better than going, well, there's no one here, there's nothing to do, there's no one to feel anything. That's the wrong answer sometimes. Sometimes it's the right answer. And you have to learn that through intuition, that subtle dance between integration and disintegration. But I think you're in a good place.
Yeah, and I feel that, like, for instance, if there's strong emotions coming up, there's a big tendency to just get my phone and distract myself. And then I know that, it's a good time to try to not do that and actually feel what I'm trying to get away from. Yeah, that's
it. So much of this is just about clear seeing, clear feeling, being willing.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot for everything.
Okay, we have Susan MP.
Hi, guys. Hi, Angelo.
Hi, Susan.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. First of all, thanks both you and Zubin. I met you guys at the retreat, actually, and so nice to see you here. So you were so right about the retreat being something that you might realize later. And I feel I came home and I've had, part of me is no longer contained in my body. But I find myself torn between, do I need to focus on something more specifically like non-duality? I taste it, I sense it, like sometimes, like if I listen to something you're doing or Adyashanti or even Zubin at this point, things get flatter, more different. I just wonder if I need to focus on that. But at the same time, I kind of missed the awakening I had. I felt something happen, but I don't ever feel like I've been at the point where my mind has been quiet. Like people talk about the thoughtless space. I don't feel like I've ever been there. I feel like I've always been, that little kid who got mic'd up on a snowboard, that little 3-year-old, his first snowboard. And he's like, you're doing such a good job. You're doing a good job. Good job, Susan. Oh, good job. Oh, look what you're doing now. I don't think I've ever shut that off. So I guess my question is, do I need to be looking more at like further inquiry of stuff, or do I need to just sit and be quiet and watch it?
Okay. So the first thing I'll tell you is, like, don't worry too much about trying to shut off thoughts or find a certain kind of space that people describe, because people describe things very differently. And sometimes it takes me a long time to realize, like, this person who always says it this way and that person always says it that way, they're actually talking about the same thing. And that's taken me with some people, like your teachers, years to realize what they're actually meaning by that, because this is very subtle stuff we're talking about. So don't worry too much about comparing your experience to a litmus test of quietude or deep silence or thoughtlessness or anything. Thoughts don't typically just disappear. Now, for some people, they do in deeper stage of realization, the mind just gets completely quiet, but it doesn't really have to. And even the mind getting quiet is one way of saying something that may be misinterpreted. So that's the first thing I want to say is, don't worry too much about that. I do want to ask you, I am curious, it came to me to ask you when you said you don't know if you had an awakening or you missed the shift or something or whatever. I want to ask you, well, if you don't mind, if you were to look for your sense of you, where you are right now, like in the most authentic, direct way, forget everyone listening, but just be as honest as you can. Where are you right now? What do you find?
Like, not within me, but like,
yeah, that's very clear to me. Yeah, that's very clear to me. So whether you've had an awakening or not doesn't matter too much to me, but you definitely sound like somebody who's gone through that. And so now it's similar to the gentleman I already talked to. It's a little bit about trusting your own intuition on when practice needs to be a bit active and when it's totally about surrender, because both will come into play. And if you fixate on either side of that, and whole spiritual teachings will focus on one side of that, you really have to find your sea legs with this. And there are going to be times when it may feel just juicy and enjoyable and like a love affair to actually investigate the dualistic or non-dualistic experience right in front of your face. It gets very, very enjoyable, and that may just entice you to do that. And it's not even, it's more like a love affair than an investigation. You're not trying to figure anything out. It's already here. Just like you don't need to figure out if you're inside or outside that body, because you already sense that that's a non sequitur question. You already know that intuitively. It's the same thing with the sense fields, but the sense fields can be a little more surprising when all of a sudden, well, there's actually no here or there either, and there's no space. You know, that's inside me and outside me at the same time. The mind has a little more trouble with that, but the direct experience of it can just become very bright and very obvious. And you are already sensing that. So it's already coming online naturally. So my inclination with you is to say, to really just do kind of what you're doing. You know, sometimes it's helpful to have kind of two types of practices you do, like maybe you do natural meditation, which is a very much surrendered type of meditation. And then if you do that for half an hour a day, maybe another half an hour a day, you do something a little more guided, like eyes open, really looking like, is there a boundary between anything here and anything over there? What makes that object an object? Where's the subject that's interpreting that as an object? And like literally looking in the experience. Another type of meditation. It's a different vibe, different frequency maybe. So sometimes just having both of those in practice can be helpful, where you kind of do address both of those sides of things. One's a little bit more direct and investigating the nature of boundaries, and the other one's really just complete relinquishment of all intentions and all agendas, and it's just sitting there. And that's more like natural meditation. So is that helpful?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Zubin may have something to say. I'm not sure.
You know, one thing that you said, Susan, about people talk about different experiences and the teachings and things like that, and how it can set a certain expectation tone in our own practice. And I often find myself looking into experience and going, am I imagining something here? Am I actually creating something in thought to try to fit some expectation tone that I've had because Adyashanti said something about a gut level awakening, or because Angelo had pointed at a thoughtless space? So then I'm trying to kind of think that that's what that is. Whereas when you just look at the exact experience in front of you, it's almost surprising how run-of-the-mill dog shit ordinary it is. And yet that's exactly it. Like, that's exactly what it is. And so for my own practice, it's been a little bit of that relinquishment of trying to make it something in my own experience. And I don't know if that's what you're experiencing, but it is something that I've reflected on myself. I see happening a fair bit.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
That's really good. A good point. The salient point of what I think he just said is, and I say it in a lot of different ways, but it seems to hit deeper and deeper as realization deepens. And that is, whatever's right there, that's it. You don't need to compare it to anything. It's just like that. It might be extremely mundane in one moment, and it might feel extremely non-dualistic in another moment. It might feel ecstatic, and sometimes it might just feel mundane or simple or direct or hard or solid. None of that matters. That's just the mind trying to find a position. So whatever's happening in this moment, that's exactly right. And it doesn't matter what anyone's ever said about it or said it should be. We don't need to second guess ourselves.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Those great questions. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to right in the middle. Kyle P.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been coming out of pretty intense bout of depression over the last year or so, and especially in coming out of the online retreat last month, and like the amount of space that opened up within it, like being able to so when I returned to daily life, one of the first reactions that I noticed come up pretty strongly was like, oh, I don't want to live. And it was bizarre. And to be clear, I don't mean I want to die, but I mean like it was really weird to like hear this voice, so to speak, say that inside, but not from a depressed place, because I feel like I got out from under that sort of heavy cloud. And it was just a bit jarring, because I guess the whole time I'm depressed, it's easy to assume that not being depressed equals wanting to live. And then to find out that that's actually not, it's actually not the case. So yeah, I guess I was just wondering if you had any pointers on engaging with that type of feeling or that type of voice specifically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I would say that everyone somewhere between an awakening or some kind of significant drop into reality or into presence, somewhere between that and the sort of very deep stages of realization, I think everybody comes in contact with what you're talking about. They might describe it subtly differently, but a lot of people describe it exactly that way. It's a very strange thing. And it's something like this. This may sound like I'm answering it in a general way, but even though it can feel really personal, it's actually not personal. It's an impersonal thing. And it has to do with the way identity is structured in consciousness and how it relates to our physical body. And so it's something like this. As we start to disentangle what feels like our identity from experience, from just raw experience, we start to lose the sense of being in control of what we're orienting toward. And we don't even realize how much we try to do that until we start to feel that come apart. When that comes apart, we realize that in one sense, at the bottom of it is this belief. And the belief is like, now this is a huge cascade of beliefs I'm talking about. So this is not always obvious right away. This becomes obvious very late. But at the very bottom of the cascade of beliefs that we find deconstructing themselves, or we deconstruct, or they just fall away, is this fundamental belief. And the fundamental belief is, I am, or I have a life, right? Mm-hmm. Now, conventionally speaking, sure, yeah, the body's alive and it's going to grow and then it's going to age and decay and die and all the things, all the life cycles. Like, of course, nature is doing what it's doing. Conventionally speaking, all that's fine and true, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an overlay. I'm talking about what has co-opted our life force energy and turned it into something it's not, turning into a separate self. As you unwind all that, you get back to this root where that sense of separate self, which is totally illusory, has rooted itself into like the physical, energetic experience of aliveness. And it doesn't belong there, really. It's not part of that, but it wants to be part of that. And so when there's nothing supporting it, you've gotten through this cascade of beliefs, those actually keep us from looking closely at this fundamental belief. It says, I'm this or I'm that. I want to live. I want to survive. All of a sudden, there's nothing supporting that anymore. So all of a sudden, it might just flip over and go, well, now I don't want to survive. What does it matter if I'm alive or dead, right? Does it even matter at all? And in some fundamental way, from the perspective of that separate self that's being deconstructed, it doesn't actually matter. Not from its point of view. because its point of view is completely relational. Everything's related to something else, and it's all based on nothing. It's all an illusion. So when you get to the bottom of a fundamental illusion, it can look very strange, and it can sound very strange. Even the way I'm speaking, I'm a little cautious about who's going to hear this, right? Because if you hear this the wrong time or in the wrong way, it could sound like I'm telling you, to kill yourself or something, but that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you deconstruct identity enough and the beliefs around who I am, how I'm related to life, the body, time, space, you're going to get to this place where it's almost a binary thing that starts to flip over. It's like, well, it doesn't matter if I'm alive or dead. Maybe I don't even want to be alive. Or sometimes people will say, there's something here that doesn't want to live. There's something here that wants to die. And yet, as you said, rightly so, almost all the time when this happens, people will say, but I'm not suicidal. I'm not going to go harm myself. I know I'm not going to do that. And I don't even feel depressed or sad, or there's no emotion tone to this. It's like a choice almost, or it's like some fundamental thing that's trying to make up its mind. Does this resonate with you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the simple thing I want to say about that is it's totally illusory. It's that one way of talking about this is it's the arrogance of the ego when you see it in its rawest form. Like it thinks it has the power of birth and death. It thinks it has godlike powers over life and death, and it doesn't have any of that power. It doesn't. And so when it gets so disarmed, it sees it has no power. It does these things like making these very, very fundamental kind of not catastrophic, but extremely generalized statements. Like, I just don't want to be here. I don't want to be alive anymore. Right. Or I don't know why I should be alive anymore. Or things like that. These very existential statements that we'll make internally. So with all that said, it doesn't actually matter that much because the mind will calm down. It's simply just another thought, although it seems to have a lot more stake because of the nature of the thought. But I think understanding where it's rooted and how deeply it's rooted, and the fact that that's just the ego being very disarmed at a very, very deep level, and it starts to say things like that, and they're very strange things sometimes. That's what I sense with that. So it's not a big deal, and just give it time; it'll pass. That's my answer. Zubin may have an answer too.
Well, I mean, this is fairly out of my depth, but I'll say this. I mean, when you really look at how the ego acts out at those sort of stages, there's nothing beyond it in terms of what it will try. For me, it's often a voice that says, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, something like that. And another voice that says, that fine, no problem with that. So I actually resonate with what you're saying quite deeply, because these voices do come up, but there is a standpoint too that either has or will kind of be realized at some point, where you start laughing because the character that you thought had all this power and all this life or death decision making, like Angela's pointing at, no, it's not even real in the sense that we think these things are real. And then you just start laughing and go, okay, all right, okay. Yeah.
I think that's very accurate. Is that helpful?
Yeah, there's just one loose thread I think I feel around it, which is like, in terms of where the resistance comes up, and I think it's around this idea of like the assumption. It's like a reaction to this idea that I have to live.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I have to, then I don't want it. It's like,
it all comes back to control, right? Again, the ego thinks I'm the one that's been doing all this damn living. And if you don't give me any more power, you don't give me anything anymore, I'm just going to end it all by deciding I'm not here. That's literally how the mind thinks at this level. And it's funny because we don't see it we don't see the absurdity because we don't look at it at this very fundamental level of belief. We look at it from this very 30,000 foot elevation level, where all we're really doing is, well, what's the next thing I'm going to do? What's the next thing I'm going to chase? Oh, I need to get that done. I need to go shopping. We're like in such superficial layers of thinking. But if we start, that's why inquiry is so powerful. You start to ask, well, why do I want to do that right now? Why am I interested in that person? Why am I, you start to get back down. Oh, okay, I'm actually running from something. Oh, I'm feeling something uncomfortable here. Oh my gosh, there's emotions I'm repressing. And right. And then we go all the way down through identity structures and so forth. But you get to the bottom of this thing and you realize like, it's all based on this very, very fundamental illusion. And that is the illusion that I'm in control in a way that you're not. We have decisions, we respond to the environment in one sense of speaking. But when you really look at what the ego structure is, it's never been in control of anything in the way it thinks it has, because it's a reflection. It's a reflection of a bunch of apparent stuff happening. So it's about control.
All right. Lots
Cool.
to chew on. Thank
Yeah.
you, boy.
Yeah, that was a great question. Okay, let's go around to the top here. We got Anne.
Hi, Angela, Stephen, everyone. Hi. After your retreat online, I went immediately that finished into a very big drama, which I'm in a 12-step group, and I have a sort of sponsor there, they call them, and it's my support system, and the group's my support system. And basically a wrecking ball came in and just blew the whole thing apart, and that was taken away, so to speak. And then after that, immediately was my financial security is possibly threatened by something impending. And what happened then was I went into, I don't even know what it was, some sort of, felt like a breakdown. I've had it before. That might sound a bit dramatic, breakdown, but I find it difficult to function, difficult to use cognitive skills. All the knowledge I have goes for a period of time, and that's coming back now. And all I can do at the moment, I can be very calm at the moment, almost just sitting in silence, or a basic mantra. I've never used mantras before, but I use the serenity prayer as a mantra, or something simple like that, just to I suppose it's just asking God for guidance, thoughts and actions, although I don't even know if I believe in God anymore, but it's just looking for some sort of direction from something outside of me, from something bigger, from the universe, let's say, if is a bigger word, higher power, universe. And there's a lot of calmness with that, but I feel like I'm guessing, I don't know if I've taken the lid off something and seen a whole lot of trauma beneath it that needs to be looked into. There's just so much going on. There's just so many levels of things, like there's one level that I can see the whole picture of everything. There's another level that's like a small child, completely not knowing what to do. There's the other level that's practical. And there's all these different things coming in. It's like, it literally felt like I was going to go insane. It's like teetering on the edge of insanity. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. The only thing I know what to do is I just sit really still most of the day, wait for the body to get up and do something. And the other part of me, I speak to Violet and Shah, and the other part of me, I'm thinking about looking into some trauma therapy, but I don't know whether to go down that line or not. I don't know whether I can handle it or not. Things like that. It's the most I can probably say about this. There's tons more and tons of writing and trying to get this much clarity. I mean, I can actually speak about it now. A few days ago, I wouldn't have been able to even string a sentence together about what was going on. It's like I don't even, I don't even know if this is non-duality anymore. Well, you know, something that I intellectually thought I'd grasped, and, you know, seeing that the me is just a thought and everything like that, everything's just blown up. I don't know. I just don't know what's what, where's where.
Zubin, do you have anything?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me first, and I was going to be, you know, just feeling out kind of the energy of what you're saying. First of all, I know exactly, I think, how hard that feels to feel that flood of everything. It's like there's a big picture, there's a small picture, there's this past trauma, there's this emotion, and I think ultimately, and Angela will have a very good answer for this, but my go-to when this happens to me has always been to do what you pointed out, which is sit in the present moment and see what's here right now. Is that emotion from some past trauma here right now? And if it is, can you feel it unobstructed? And, you know, if it feels overwhelming in the sense, in many ways, that's thought telling you this is overwhelming, I can't handle this, etc. And sometimes I'll just put my two hands palm first on the ground and close my eyes and feel like I'm grounded into this massive body of energy that the earth is. And that's enough to short circuit the circuit for a second, and I'm back here. But that's, you know, I'm going to turn it over to Angela, because I know that he has good wisdom here.
Yeah, those are good suggestions for sure. So yeah, there's a lot I wanted to give you in response, because there were so many aspects to what you were talking about. So I'm going to say a handful of things that maybe some are related, some are a little unrelated, but you can watch this back, of course, and glean whatever comes from it. So the first thing I feel inclined to say is, from the standpoint of realization, this is good. Like, I know it doesn't feel good, and it feels completely disorienting and even destabilizing at times. I know that. But my sense of it with you is to tell you that, like, even when it feels unsafe and disorienting and so forth, you are safe. Like, there's something here that's holding this, partially inside, partially outside, completely ineffable. There's an okayness to it that runs very, very deep. And so just know that even though all these elements are so disassociated sometimes and so confusing, and this is very steep for you, I can feel that for sure, both in the spiritual spectrum, which does include when you don't even know if it's spirituality anymore or what the hell's going on. That is the steepness I'm talking about. And also your life, the practicalities of your life is all. And so those are both happening at the same time, or at least have recently. That can be just an added level of sort of disorientation. And I get that. This won't last forever. This level of disorientation and stuff, it's not going to last forever. It sounds like you might have gotten through a portion of it, you know, a few days ago. One thing I also thought to say is, it does sound like some degree of dorsal vagal shutdown that happens with you, like that freeze response when things get too stressful, which in and of itself is okay. But just knowing that that's what can happen and sometimes does happen can be helpful. And just realizing that there are things you can do actually to reintegrate into the senses, especially the body sense, when there's like that dorsal vagal shutdown happening. Like, you can look up vagal nerve remyelination. There's a lot of ways to do it. Physical things, including like partner type things, dance, cuddling, petting animals, hugging yourself. But Zubin was talking about putting your hands on the ground, feeling the earth, laying on the earth, walking through grass barefoot, anything that brings you back into the body sense. It may not, like, it's not like snapping your fingers and all of a sudden that freeze response is gone, but it will just help you in an organic way reintegrating. And then the other thing is, when things get really disorienting and you feel that shutdown, sometimes just reminding yourself to take very simple, practical steps that are helpful with whatever practical issues going on. Even if it's a very, very small step, just tell yourself, okay, I know I can do this one thing. I can get up, walk across the room, and, you know, make that phone call and pay a bill, or whatever it is, like a very practical, digestible step. Because what happens sometimes is the mind is trying to get around so much at once that it shuts down. And so instead of that, just go, okay, well, what can I do right now? A few steps I can take that should just take care of some practical matters that maybe will reduce the stress around me right now. So really morselizing the things that you need to do to take care of business when you're feeling really overwhelmed. That's another aspect to this. I'm glad you're working with Shar and Violet. They're going to be a lot of help. With the trauma stuff you were mentioning, I'm actually disinclined at this point to tell you to start digging into trauma really right now. If something comes, that's great, right? It's fine. If something comes and it feels like, okay, this is something related to my past, I can feel what it is, I want to sit with it, but here's the emotions that are associated, let me dig into that a little bit, that's fine. But I wouldn't go chasing it down. I wouldn't go digging for it. Let presence guide you. And if presence in the moment feels peaceful, then that's fine. You don't need to go digging for trauma. If in the moment you feel some contraction, then maybe ask, well, what am I reacting to? Am I reacting to something? Maybe there's nothing there. Maybe it's just a physical sensation, and that's okay too. So just be simple about things and be direct and and let presence lead you through this, and you'll get through it. That's most of what I feel inclined to say.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. That's amazing. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to Lubina.
Hey, Angelo, how's it going?
Good. Nice to see you.
Feeling. Nice to see you too. I had a feeling you were going to call on me like right this second.
Have you talked to Ishwar lately? I feel like you.
I have.
I thought so.
How did you know that?
Because he has this thing where he's like walking emptiness, and I get an electric shock. No, I'm just kidding. No, he mentioned it to me.
He is like an electric shock, though.
He is,
like
isn't he?
the moment I spoke to him, I had such a deep shift. It was like, and then the next week, my life just like tore itself apart in all directions. And all I could do was like lay in bed and be like, what the hell is happening?
Sometimes when I send people a call, to give them a call, I'm like, but make sure you're ready before you call him. Just so you know, he doesn't mess around. He's very direct. And they're like, oh.
No, he really doesn't. I mean, honestly, after the double barrel that you did with him, I wanted to reach out to him, but there was like a part of me that was kind of scared because I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be something. I don't know what. It was just like something. I don't know what. So I kind of took my time. And then finally, when I did reach out to him, I was very happy. Like I'm very excited about what's happening, but at the same time, it's like it's really intense.
Yep.
So a couple of things that I want to ask about. The first one, I kind of talked to Eshwar a little bit about it, and I just wanted to see what you had to say about it. Because when I talked to him about it, he was like, "Have you spoken to Angelo?" And so I was like, "Okay, next time I see him, I will." And so I started noticing, so like after I spoke to Eshwar, I did have like a full, very like Kundalini experience, lasted a short amount of time, and it was followed. I mean, it followed like an opening, like a really beautiful, deep opening that I had just speaking to him, right? That lasted, I want to say it lasted about a day and a half or so. And then like shit started to hit the fan. Like I had the biggest fight with my mom, and I never fight with my mom, like to the point where today's like the first day that I've come to see them, and I'm already like extremely uncomfortable. Like every part of my body is like cringing just being here. So that kind of stuff, and of course, there's trauma coming up, and I'm working through it. I have my tools that I'm using for it as best as I know how. But what I wanted to ask you about was as this stuff started to happen, I should also tell you, because it's probably worth it to mention, I also did 5-MeO DMT for the first time that same week. That's kind of why I had the courage to call Eshwar, I think. It was like, so, I mean, I guess I set myself up for this, so I'm not really complaining. But I started having this experience like as soon as I'm about to go to sleep. And at first I thought it was just like New York City vibrations, but like I started realizing like the whole room starts to vibrate, almost feels like an earthquake. And I mean, sometimes I have premonitive dreams and stuff. And when there was when the earthquake was happening in Turkey, I felt it, and I felt it in my room. So I was like, is it just a leftover from that? But it just like kept happening. And then it started happening even in my meditations a little bit. And one of the days that I woke up and it was like the sound of Aum just like vibrating through my body and waking me up. It's not freaking me out. I just don't know what to do with it because it's a lot of shaking. And I don't know what it means. I mean, don't need to know, I guess, but I don't know. It's kind of a different experience than what I've had. I've had a lot of, experiences, and this also feels in the realm of experience, but also something more. I don't know.
Quite energetic.
Yeah, very, very energetic. A lot of energetic shifts.
Yeah. What I would do? Oh, is that the end of your question?
That's one question, but yeah. So that's
what I used to do when I
ask.
started experiencing that, I experienced it multiple times in different severities, I would say. But one of the things I learned to do, which I later, 5 years later, 7 or 8 years later, realized that there's a name for it, but is TRE, trauma releasing exercise. I figured out how to do this because I would wake up with that energy, and I would so finally I was like, okay, I'm going to really let it have my body. So I would go lay down on the floor and just literally like let it just move my whole body and shake and shake and shake. And I kind of started doing it almost as a practice, like because it was like more of a preemptive thing because there was just so much energy, and I didn't have a name for what I was doing. I just knew it. I kind of had to do it. And it felt like energy management to me, like subtle energy management, because there was so much energy just moving through. It does affect your sleep for a while. It won't last forever, but I remember I slept less than I usually would for quite a period of time just because of that energy, and it tended to come at night when I was in deep sleep or whatever. But I think as you described it, you can tell there's nothing you need to do with it or about it, and you kind of can't. Actually, it's not like you definitely can't suppress it, and there's no need to encourage it, and there's no need to control it. So really, it's just a matter of, can you give it a little bit more of an open conduit and kind of work with it as far as timing. So TRE is a trembling exercise you do in the morning often, or whatever, and you do it as a practice, and it can be really valuable for chronic pain, things like that. But I've found it's good for subtle energy management. When I learned it, which was only in the last year, I was like, oh, I figured this out before. I learned I had to do this, but it never really dawned on me to do it really as a preemptive daily practice. So you might want to just take that up. It works really well, and you can learn it on YouTube, but you probably don't need to learn it. You could probably lay down and do it right now without any preliminary exercises. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I did see the interview with Chris where she talked about the TRE stuff. So yeah. Okay, I'll definitely check that out. I mean, I know that a lot of what's coming out is definitely like old buried trauma. And interestingly, I'm like having memories of having had like, I guess, glimpses in the past that I never understood were glimpses. And now like those moments are showing themselves to me for, I guess, what they were. And the other question I had is like, so this feeling of tension that comes back, because it's like coming and going now, right? And I found it to be accompanied with like this trash bag full of thoughts about like inauthenticity, and just like noticing how every single one of my interactions is kind of laced with this subtle layer of inauthenticity and
persona.
Right. Yeah.
And we all do it, right?
And it's different with every single person. It's like my voice changes each time I talk to a different human being. And now it's like getting really uncomfortable because I cannot see it anymore. I mean, sometimes I can laugh at it, but other times I'm just like, this just feels so weird and almost wrong. And and then I can feel like, I almost feel like I'm touching this like very basic contraction that exists nowhere, although I kind of identify with it as my contraction. So that was the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because it comes and goes, that sense of openness, and then that feeling of like almost like a one-pointed contraction, and it's like kind of holding everything together, like so tight.
Yeah.
So
This is all interrelated. So just for anyone, you probably feel what I'm saying, but for anyone watching, when to put it in a very general way, you could say that this unbinding process releases a lot of almost like I don't know how to say it, but like stress in the body, like contracted energy. Identity isn't just a mental process, it's physically encoded in the body. And so the deeper we touch in, or the less we're operating out of identity, the more physical it gets. It just gets physical. And for some people, it's even physically painful. It's energetic, it's shaking, moving.
yes.
So it's a very physical, it becomes a very physical process. And, you know, at first it can be a very mental process. And then after a shift or an awakening, then it fluctuates a lot. There's expansiveness, then there's a lot of emotion. So it's starting to move down into the emotion body. When it gets even beyond the emotion body, it's energetic and physical. And it's literally just encoded in the body, and you feel it that working itself out. And there's no map to that. There's no way you're going to control it. You definitely don't want to suppress it. And you just have to let it play itself out. But I know exactly what you're talking about. And I thought as you're talking, I feel like I want to move my body. So like do you feel inclined? Do you dance? Do you do dance, things like that? You might want to consider like some in dance or ecstatic dance or movement practices or intuitive movement.
Oh, it's funny because like all of this kind of sped up about the time of the retreat, or right before that, when I like injured my back, and it stopped all my movement practices for a while, but now it's gotten much better, and I'm starting to move back into movement again. And in a couple of weeks time, I will be going on actually like a full 7-day dance drumming thing. So that should be good. I think that's going to move stuff around.
Yeah.
Very timely. It's almost like just the things that are happening. It's like, is this really so well set up? How's that even possible, kind of thing?
This all is happening it's all happening at an energetic level. The stories we're telling ourselves, the appearance of separate bodies, that stuff is very superficial compared to the energetic level at which this all functions truly. And so I can feel with this, like this isn't something you have any choice over. It's playing itself out just like it needs to. It is sort of a phase. I mean, this may come and go for you for a while, but when this kind of energetic unfolding is happening, you're just along for the ride, to be honest. There's not really much, except for, like I said, you know, finding ways to like work with it and give it more of a conduit, finding ways to let your body be more of a conduit for it sometimes can be helpful, because through habituation, this is why you're feeling that persona just feeling so weird. Through habituation, we actually contract the body's movements in various ways, and we modulate them in ways that are completely inauthentic, and you feel that coming apart. So those are ways in which we can actually open the body conduit to allow this energy to move through more naturally. And it can even be authentic relating, circling, things like that. Allowing yourself to express yourself more naturally, emotionally, will decrease the amount of struggle and energy that's put into keeping a false persona together.
That makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah. Zubin may have stuff to say too. I've been blabbing this whole time.
No, that was great. It's really funny. Talking to Ishwar is like smoking non-duality crack. And because I've been through that, and I'll tell you,
really,
it's like he throws you right into the void with no life preserver. And then when you're in the void, he's talking to you. Hey, so the void, right? And it's just it's ethereal and a little unsettling, more than a little unsettling. And I can completely relate to this idea, this innate kind of reticence to even make the call, because you know what it's going to open up. The other thing I'll say is that energetic stuff, absolutely. After even the virtual retreat, anything could trigger a sense of just really wanting to move, and you feel in the body, and any resistance is not only futile, but you can feel it actually tightening down a contraction, almost generating around this kind of sense of self. And when it relaxes, what Angela's pointing at is actually spot on, like doing TRE or just letting your body move. I found out even in meditation, I'll start to do the TRE, it'll just happen. And I'm just glad no one's looking at me, because it'll look like one of those old time like church revivals where people are like shaking on the floor. But that's kind of what it feels like. So
yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, the reminder to move my body, because I think I just kind of got stuck, and that feeling of like trauma stuck is also somewhere there in my energetic field for sure. I'm also finding it really hard to like repress anything. It's kind of challenging, because it just like kind of comes out of my mouth now. And I want to say it kindly, but I can't, because there's anger there. What can I do? And that's also not an excuse. So there's this like whole sense of like, let me just bury my head and stay under the sand until this passes or something, so I don't burn everyone around me with it, because it's not their problem, really.
You're doing great. You're doing awesome.
All right. Thank you, Angelo.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. That was a good one. All right. Let's go with Madge, M-A-J.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I had an awakening about 4 or 5 years ago when I looked out of these eyes. I was suddenly living inside of a lady, a woman. I called her the woman. And then I recognized a lot of what the people have been talking about, I've been processing a lot of emotion and stuff like that. I was actually trained to be an actress, so yeah, I was good at emotion. And then a couple of weeks ago, my self started to disappear, and I dropped my name, and now I'm just like, laughing my head off. This is really, really strange. And I was just wondering if you could speak to who's talking to who and why, because when I'm strong and very settled in this, oh, this is just marvelous, this is just beautiful, I can take things in and just be with whatever is happening. But then when it's a little thinner, I go, why? But why? Why is this like this? Who are you? And why are you experiencing me? We are the same, I know, but we're not. Or I'm very confused and not confused at all.
Yeah, I might point you to, in those moments, not who, because you're never going to find an answer to that, and you already know that, and not a why, because why might lead you into your mind, or like there's no conceptual thing, but maybe where meaning where is even a sense of moving inward to some apparent inner world, like where is that even starting, if anywhere, right? And one way of doing that is you can just fluctuate through the senses. Okay, just sensation.
Yes, but
just a universe of sensation, just hearing. The universe is hearing. There's nothing else. Just seeing. The universe is seeing. The universe is seeing. There's one and the same. So where can an inward movement occur?
I know.
Yeah, that's it. So there's very little for you to.
But do you exist? I mean,
I don't know where to look to answer that question. There's nowhere to look to answer that. There's nowhere for that question to land. This is what you know is true of everyone, but there's no one for that to be true about.
Yeah, okay, something just dropped in now. It's like everything is happening now and dropping away, and happening now and dropping away. So the answer that my mind is looking for is does Angelo exist? But he exists and he's gone and he's here and he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
I'm
right.
talking to something that that flips up and goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not even an Angelo, it's just sensations and
I know,
visual
yeah.
experiences. It's like shades and colors and movements.
Yes.
Those are what those appearances are what you actually even have to apply a very subtle layer of mind to say it comes and goes. It arises and departs. You need a
Yes.
little bit of a belief in time, or you need to subtly change perspective to see alive, dead, birth, death, coming, going, arising, departing. When you see that doesn't exist, then arising and departing don't even mean anything anymore. So whatever this is here and not here. It's real and not real at all. It's solid and never could ever possibly be solid. It's right in front of your face. It's right in your hand. And it's also the furthest galaxy in this apparent universe. And they're not two things. Yeah?
Yes.
See how clear that is? Isn't that clarity fucking amazing?
It's
amazing.
No words.
It's astounding. Yeah. And yet it's super simple.
And it's not really that strange, except when it goes into this machine here, then it becomes strange.
It gets strange very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to put God in a bottle or some shit, or like trying to take the whole universe. Yeah. It's an absurdity, but it's also sometimes that's just a natural tendency to just kind of try to do that for a second. And then, it's fine. Everything's fine. You're good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy yourself.
Yes, I am so happy. It's great.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Zubin, you have anything else?
I just want to say I fucking love this shit so much. Like, I love it. It's exactly that. That's so great. There's not. I mean, what's to say? Even the question becomes like, what?
And it's so great. Even in the middle of my menopause heat wave here, I'm like, what is this?
I love it.
I'm still a kind of human.
She reminds me a little bit of Ishwar. Ishwar is kind of like that too. He's just like, I can play human. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah. Much love to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go to Rachel.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel.
Yeah. First off, I'd just like to say that I've related to everyone so far so deeply, and I'm so grateful for the honesty, because I feel really supported by it right now. I've been going through a lot of emotional stuff, and I also have had a lot of trouble sleeping. And partly I think that is my senses feel so heightened that they can be almost invasive. Like I'll smell something and it'll arrest me from sleep, and it's like 4 floors below me. And I think it's like right on my pillow or something. And so at the same time, I feel like I've been pushed to the brink, like pretty on a regular basis, not being able to sleep. And whereas like in the past, I would have thought this is hopeless, I wouldn't have seen any meaning in it. Now I do feel like a sense that there are things deeply buried that I can keep control of, in like my kind of ideal state, that this is illuminating for me. And so in a way, I have an acceptance. At the same time, I feel really vulnerable. And so that's one aspect. And then I also wanted to touch on this this phenomenon of feeling that I'm affecting my reality in negative as well as positive ways, and then feeling delusional, like it's not if that's not really happening, or like I couldn't have manifested that. And so I think my question then is about how to trust my intuition, how to like relax that just that feeling of being skeptical of everything at all times, and that, you know, dropping that defensive mechanism. So again, I guess the link there is vulnerability, just feeling really scared of being vulnerable.
So so I feel when I hear you talk, I feel the same thing as the last time I heard you talk. And
Oh, right. Okay.
we
I
talked
feel
one
like
other
it's a bit
time,
intense
and it was like New Year's Eve, I think. I
yeah.
remember that. Yeah. So what I want to say to you is, like, you have an extremely porous energy. You have a huge heart. You have a huge heart. You just are like that. It's just the way you came into this life. And you know that. But what comes with that is the way we armor ourselves in life. We all learn to do it in various ways. But the person who has that massive heart and is very porous energetically, extremely sensitive, I'll say energetically, or you can't disconnect from anything around you. What you learn to do is you learn to armor in very clever ways and so forth. And that's just how it is. You're learning to trust yourself to unarmor. And that's great. And sometimes it is a stepwise fashion. You got to kind of take baby steps and dip your toe in the pool, then jump back out and try to get back in. And some parts of it are going to be like that. That's just how it is with human nature, because human behavior is complex. Other humans can be, some you can trust, some you can't trust. You know, you have to navigate all that. But I will tell you, overriding everything is what you can trust is love. You can trust love for sure. The love, but this isn't this is a kind of love that goes beyond human dimensions for sure. And so I want to give you a very simple exercise that you can do anytime. Okay. And it's very simple. It has to do with the five senses. Okay. And it's just like this. It's kind of what I said to someone, one or two people ago, but so we can just take our attention, and maybe it's up in thoughts, or it's like trying to navigate the environment, and just say, okay, for just one moment, all there is sensation. So I'm going to put my full attention in the sensations, whether it's in the body or outside the body. It's physical, the body sensation, all of it, head to toe, visceral, tactile, all of it. And so the intonation would be only feeling. That feeling is everything. It's the whole universe. There doesn't need to be anything but that for this moment. There's nothing to navigate. There's nothing to figure out. There's no gatekeeper. There's only sensation. And just feel that. Yeah. And then we can say, and you can stay there as long as you want, but then we say only sound. Take in all of the sound. There is only sound. And there's a truth to this, actually. There's only sound. 360, every direction, inside, outside. This whole experience is sound. The universe is made out of sound. And then only colors, forms, shapes, what's right in front of your face, the visual experience. It's just as empty and full as sound and sensation. There's no distance. There's no out there or in here. It's all completely contained in only itself, because there's nothing else. Nothing needs to manage or mitigate that at all. And you can work, that's a practice. You can do this literally walking around, driving, anything. And it will ground you more and more and more into the senses and into vivid, radiant presence. And that has to be your attunement. Over time, sooner or later, that is your attunement. That's it.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. There's no one that's going to manage this. You're never going to figure out how to manage it. You can't. It's too big. It's too powerful. That's right. Unconditional love is too big for you, for me, for anyone. But it will show you if you remain abjectly present, surrendered into presence. And the five senses is presence. Do it when you taste, when you put food in your mouth, and just let it fill up everything in the every corner of the universe is that taste of whatever. Smell. Yeah. That's those senses are going to show you everything you need to know. It's a different kind of language. It's a language of ecstatic aliveness.
I appreciate that so much. And for someone like you to give me permission to run toward it and not be only more afraid, because the messaging that I've always received is that it's dangerous to let that much in. That I'm receiving, you know, all this energy without any filter, or that that, you know, I will only be hurt by it because I'm too open. Yeah, it feels radical, but just right. And what was particularly astounding, and I only had, like, because I'm based in London, half a day on the meditation retreat that you did, the sensation that flooded my body. It was like all the clamps and cynicism, the ways that I knew how to navigate, the only ways I thought I could navigate the world with, fell away. I was just this like ball of sensation, and I just never ever heard meditation spoken about like that. I don't know how it was such a mystery to me, but for me, that's been my experience. I've had a lot of physical symptoms. Yeah. So hoping it will, over time, I'll have some more equilibrium restored. At the moment.
You will. It can be a big transition. You're also on a steep, many people who have spoken today are on a very steep path, and you're one of them.
Yeah. It feels that way. Yeah.
Trust yourself. Trust yourself beyond anything you know about yourself, and especially anything you've learned about what it means to be a person that has to manage their what they let in, what they let out. It's already here. It's already here. And trust that. And then you'll know what to do in practical terms. You'll know, you'll read people well. You'll know about boundaries. It'll just be obvious. Just stay here. Stay here. Yeah. Okay. You're so welcome. Nice to see you again.
Me too.
Zubin?
No, that was perfect. Beautiful. Rachel, thank you for sharing all that. Really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Zubin first on the next one. Let's go to Raynor.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Angelo. Hey, Zubin.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. My question is, in your opinion, is it helpful to know if you've experienced an awakening before?
That's a great question for Zubin.
What a good question. I've struggled with this myself quite a bit, because being a kind of an intellectualizer, I'm always wondering, have I attained the MacGuffin that you're supposed to get, or you can go to the next level, right? Like, and it actually took Angelo kind of beating that out of me over a series of encounters. And what I mean by it is this: in some sense, it's impossible to know from the mind whether you're awake or not, or even what that really means. So you have to kind of open to this possibility that you can't know whether you've had an awakening or not. And so to that extent, I'm always surprised talking to people who say, well, I haven't had awakening, but this, that, and the other thing, and my current experience is like this. And, and I'm listening to them and I'm feeling their energy, and I'm going, like, I think this distinction of awake and not awake is not helpful here, because the net sort of energy is you're so present, you kind of are feeling reality unfolding as it is, and you're clearly, emotions are rising, all these other things are happening that are supposed to happen post-awakening, whatever that means. And yet here they are. So I think for me, increasingly, it's becoming clear that it's not always clear or necessary to even frame it in that way. But I want to turn it over to Angelo, because he speaks about this very eloquently. But my own experience has been, in some way, it was a hindrance, worrying so much about what is this experience of awakening. And it turned out not to be that at all.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. there's such a side effect for the fact that I wrote a book about awakening and I talk about it, even though in the book I say it a million times, it's not an event and all this. We can't avoid the conventional. We can't avoid the relative world that we seem to live in. So we have language, and you have to use language to communicate certain things. So there is definitely a value to communicating that there is a possibility that I'm calling awakening. Because for me, before I knew it was possible, I suffered tremendously. Something led me to the breadcrumbs I needed to find out that it was possible. And as soon as I found out it was possible, and I sensed not only that it's possible, but how to do it, that it didn't take long for me. But I guess I hit the right resource and I suffered enough. And that was 3 Pillars of Zen. Once I read that and I was like, oh, that's where I'm going. It happened quickly for me. But I've met people who can't quite identify when exactly it happened to them. But when I'm talking to them, I'm like, this person feels quite awake. I've also talked to people who honestly thought they had an awakening, and I'm talking to them, I'm like, no, I really don't think they did. And so both of those are kind of exceptions. For the most part, people seem to know when it happened. They seem to have really identified this significant shift in their identity, even if it's not some earth-shattering mystical experience, even if it's not the way other people describe it. They're like, no, something definitely changed. There's no doubt about something about me completely changed and got bigger, or maybe less real or less solid, or I saw that there was no possibility for a separate me. And so
I guess what's confusing for me is I had a moment, it was very simple, where I just sort of clearly saw thoughts and space around thoughts, and very clearly saw that I was not the author of the thoughts, that they were sort of emerging from stillness, you could say, and then falling back into stillness. And there was this emotional release or energetic release, you could say, and a lot of laughing. But for me, the next day, like, it somehow identification was seemingly happening again. And I read Adyashanti's book, and I've been sort of trying to contextualize my experience of like, well, maybe I'm losing motivation because that was an awakening and my personal will is starting to fall, and maybe emotions are coming up. It's like there's some security in trying to contextualize my experience in, oh, that was an awakening and that's why these things are happening. But if I'm being honest, I feel right now identified. I don't feel awake.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know what that means, but so I think that's what it's about for me.
yeah, it does sound like a pre-taste of awakening. And a pre-taste of awakening is like, the experience is quite like awakening experientially, but there's a whole other dimension to it, a whole other element that's just not an experience. It's identity level. And so that's it. In one sense, it's the most subtle part of it, but it does change everything. And it usually isn't like the next day you feel the same again. It's usually like months of sort of very different kind of experiencing, like when I talk to someone who just went through it, it's always extremely obvious. When I talk to someone who had it 8 years ago, sometimes it's a little harder to sort out because they're not even inclined to talk about anything as an event anymore. So they discount the fact that they had that shift. But if I really walk them back and I go, yeah, tell me about what happened back there. Oh yeah, well, and then they tell me about it. I'm like, you don't think that was an awakening? Well, yeah, I guess it was, that kind of a deal. But usually if someone says, hey, I had this vast opening, I could see that these were just my thoughts. I became like this witness. There was a release, there was a peace, there was a flow, and then it was gone in a day. That's more how a pre-taste feels. And I had that a few times before awakening, for sure. An awakening for me was pretty radical. Like, it was a very significant shift in everything for me. So my guess is that's not quite what happened. Does it matter? It's not the be all end all, because sometimes you can just still do the same practices anyway. Emotion work is always valuable. If you want to sit in consciousness or sit in unbound consciousness, that's always valuable. If you're inclined to natural meditation or shikantaza, that's always valuable. If you're inclined to really drill down into it, what it like using a koan or using a one-pointed approach, go for it. Turn your mind into like a laser beam. Don't separate from the point of inquiry, whatever it is, until the mind just gets quiet. And you go through the emotional fear barrier and things like that. You can do that. There's no harm to that at all. Yeah. Yeah.
Could I ask one
Of
more
course.
question?
Yeah.
I have a what's the word? Resistance to self-inquiry of asking the question specifically, who am I? But like shikantaza, like natural meditation, I love that. But for some reason, self-inquiry, I've always just had an aversion to it. And I guess like my mind says, well, supposedly that's like a really good practice. You want to wake up, so you should do it anyway. But I don't know, I don't know if I should push myself. And I kind of experiment with it and go back and forth, and probably there's no right or wrong answer here, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are. And
I wouldn't go back and forth. I would pick something and just keep drilling down into it. But if you don't feel self-inquiry, like in the way it's described as like, who am I? If that doesn't feel valuable to you, don't worry about it. Don't do it that way. It's fine. Have you read my book?
I'm reading it.
Oh, okay. When you get towards the end, like the last couple of chapters, I described like a way of working directly with thoughts. And I think that's a more potent and direct approach. It's still the point is the same as self-inquiry, but it's very technical, and you get caught in your thoughts, and you're an intellectual person like I was for sure. So I think that might help you a little more, as far as might be a more interesting approach, because it's very technical and it shows you how to differentiate a thought from, well, what's not a thought. And that unbinding is the key to self-inquiry or inquiry. The other thing you could consider is, like, instead of asking, who am I? Where am I? Where the sense of me is somewhere. Where the hell is it? And just like literally try to find it. It's almost like a Vipassana thing. So that's another approach that may work as well.
That one does resonate. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, man. See ya. Nice question. Yeah, I like that. Okay, what do we got? HG.
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, it's so cool to be here, and I've listened to everything you have on your podcast, and so it's it's a strange feeling. Yeah, so where am I in this? So there's something that's really different for me. Like I've been suffering for so long, and suddenly it's nowhere to be found, and life is effortless, and I feel a trust that I'm never going to suffer again, ever. And it's also not a fear of losing it, or and I'm not afraid of like anything, not even dying. I'm sort of okay with all of it.
That's awesome.
And then some days I'm just plain old ordinary me, procrastinating, lost in thought, and it's uncomfortable, and I'm behaving in ways that it's not who I want to be, or that I can identify myself with. And suddenly, being in that state, I'm back to the no suffering, and it feels like craziness, because I'm driving my wife crazy as well, because we can have a big fight, and then I want to hug, because I love you. You're the best person in the world, and she's just, yeah, but 5 minutes ago you wanted a divorce. So what's up with that? So yeah, I don't know what my question is, but I'm a bit confused.
Yeah.
What is this?
This is very typical post-awakening. Very typical. It is. So a couple things happen after awakening, and you described the first part brilliantly. And as I mentioned in my book, it's a self-validating experience. Self-validating meaning there's no doubt anymore. Like, in some sense, there's just even the paradigm of doubt doesn't make sense anymore. It has no place. There's a spaciousness or a fluidity that's just already here. It's not caused. It's the fundamental experience, right? And you know that. You can't unknow that. And that's great. That's awakening, right? That's important to, if you don't know that, then you're just up here and you're struggling and suffering until that point, you know. And you, like you, I suffered a lot up until that, a lot, like it was very intense. So when that happens, when that unbinding happens, that big shift, that's great. And it also brings all of the stuff to the surface that needs to come to the surface that was preventing it from being clear the whole time, because it is here all the time. And you know that it's here for me, here for you, here for everyone on here for the most suffering person in the world. It's just the truth. And yet it gets obscured. Why does it get obscured? Well, you don't need to intellectualize it. Reality is going to pull all of the repressed emotions, stick it right in your face and go, here's why. And what do you do with that? You do your best. You do your best. You apologize to your wife. You feel the emotion you need to feel. You cry when you need to cry. You inquire if you need to inquire about what's really sticking here. There's a belief here. There's something, you know, what is it? And then you sit still when you need to sit still. And that's it. This is very simple. You feel that, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a natural process. But this is quite typical for post-awakening, for sure.
Yeah, the only thing that I try to keep in mind, or not keep in mind, but I can feel my willingness to be with every feeling, whatever taste it has, and
yeah,
and it's quite uncomfortable, and I haven't cried like all my life, and now I'm crying all the time in different settings, but I can feel the willingness, but it also drives me crazy to have this instability in my experience, and not knowing which person is going to show up.
Well, yeah, the only thing I will add is a little bit of a practical thing you can try to apply. And that is, when we have a lot of repressed emotion and it's been repressed a long time and we're just not familiar with it, what it is, partially there's beliefs that affect our ability to understand our capacity for emotion. So we actually think we can't handle anger. And strangely, that belief makes us act out in anger. It makes us actually blame another person for the anger and take it out on them, right? For instance. So what I would say is to start to apply some discernment of like, okay, I feel anger, I feel jealousy, I feel rage, I feel whatever I feel. And I also feel this thing called blame. And part of me wants to take it out on my wife, but do I need to? Does it have anything to do with her at all? You know, just start to see, like, really differentiating between when an emotion is fully inhabited by the body, fully accepted, you're willing to feel it, you're willing to understand it, inquire into where it came from, you're not trying to push it away. That's great. Where that turns into blame and then projection outward, that's when it can become unhelpful and unhealthy. So I would start to make that differentiation. And believe me, when it's been repressed for years, it's not natural that you know that. You don't even always sense it because it seems to happen so fast. But you can learn that you really do have a lot more capacity for emotion than you realize, and you don't have to involve anyone else in it. You know, you can feel emotion and still make, you know, good decisions, and feel a lot of intense emotions and still have a calm conversation, and not let your own reaction to the emotion unduly influence your communication and your behavior and so forth. And part of that's just going to happen. That's going to happen anyway. You're going to naturally figure all this out, but you can also add a little bit of an intention there to just sort of go, okay, you know, let's see if I can find that boundary between just completely feeling it and letting my body feel this and acting out on it in a way that's maybe not helpful. That's all I would add. I don't want to add too much for you because I think you're in a pretty good place with this, and it's playing out naturally.
Yeah, that's the feeling that it's unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where I'm going, but it's unstoppable.
That's true.
And there's a small feeling. Yeah, am I fooling myself? Is there something that's here, or is it just, am I fooling myself? And as soon as I say that, I know I'm not fooling myself, because something is and
Good.
To have the feeling of being fully in a messy situation, but still, and it's not a feeling, and but there's something there that knows this is not going to be here for forever, or trust, or
it'll evolve. Yeah.
Yeah.
Zubin, I want to hear what Zubin has to say about this, if he has something.
When I heard you talking, brother, I was like, oh my gosh, like me talking out of the screen at myself with a cooler accent. Like I the same exact experience path with this kind of alternating, volatility. And I think I would just double down on what Angelo said, which is that applying that little bit of discernment to the experience, because it can be very overwhelming when the strong emotions come, but just being able to say, oh, you know what, this actually isn't even anger. It's actually, let me feel into that. It's actually shame. And feeling like, oh, so where's that coming from? And what's the root of that? And just sitting with that can be very helpful. And then as far as the relational thing, because I have a wife too, and I drive her crazy. And what I found is sometimes when I'm feeling those strong emotions, it's not necessarily important that I share exactly what I'm feeling with her. It's more that sometimes I can just say, I'm just going through a little strong emotion. Like I just need to sit, and that's enough. And she understands now because we've been open enough to talk about it. So that's the only non-wisdom I can add to this.
Yeah, honesty can be not so good all the time. So yeah, I'm gonna park it.
Love it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Ted.
There we go. Can you
Go
hear
ahead,
me
Ted.
now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, it's just amazing how much great information I get from these talks, just listening to others. It's amazing. And I'm so grateful for your work and what you do. It's interesting. I can really relate to what HT was talking about. It's kind of a segue into what my questions were, and it has to deal with relationship. My wife keeps asking me, she said, what's wrong with you? What's going on with you? And to try to explain it is quite difficult. I can't recall who it was, but somebody said, just explain to them that you're going through something, and just give you time to be able to get through it. But one of the blocks I believe I have is my feeling of responsibility in my relationship with her and with my family. I'm afraid that I'm going to disappear and not be able to handle my responsibilities. And if I could get some advice from that on that, I would appreciate it.
Zubin?
Yeah, this is a very, very common kind of thing that comes up, especially I sense that you're a lot like me, kind of dutiful, responsible, have the family connection piece, and that provides a kind of a sense of stability too. And then you throw in this mix of just the pure volatility of awakening and the fact that you can't know what it is, what's going to happen a second from now, because there is no second from now. It's complete chaos in that sense. And so the deep fear, I think, comes to some extent from our conditioned character, in my experience, recoiling against this perceived instability because it wants to control the thing. It wants to have its network of loyal, trusted, loving people that it supports and that support it. And the idea that could be untrue on some fundamental level is terrifying. And it then will introduce these thoughts that arise, oh, I'm going to lose my family, or I'm going to disappear, et cetera. And it doesn't help when the family sees the instability and they reflect back on you. What's wrong with you? Are you losing your mind? Are you going to quit your job? Are you going to, I've had my parents tell me this. I've had my wife ask me point blank. And then it's clear that it's not the case. So I think there's a kind of a letting go and a trust that this is a natural and lawful and important process. And then those things kind of click, and also recognizing that these fears are just more thoughts. But I'll turn it over to Angelo because he really has helped me understand this better too.
Yeah, I mean, when you said you're worried that you might go away, well, partially that's true. It's going to happen. I mean, like, part of you is going to go away. Part of the way you think about yourself, the way you know yourself, the way you see the world and so forth, that's going to change very fundamentally. In one sense, it'll go away. But in practical terms, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be there for your family. But the reason I tell you to accept that is because then you know how it looks to your wife and your family sometimes. They feel like something that used to be there is like not there. Something, and you know, you're there, you come and go, you still go to work and come home and you eat with the family, and like you're going through the normal motions, but something about you, they sense is actually like disappearing. And that can be really unsettling. So having some empathy for them, compassion for understanding that, and just seeing that, like, when you start with an emotional connection with somebody, whether it's romantic or otherwise, or you just find yourself in an emotional connection, like through the family you grew up in, there are certain expectations that are behavioral and communicative, that are so ingrained in the way you interact with people that you don't even consciously, or you're not even consciously aware of them. But when this process happens, they start to break down. You stop responding in the ways you would normally respond to things, and they see it and they know it. And it feels like you're not there, you're pulling away, you're confusing me. So again, I just think it's helpful for you to understand their perspective and like how strange that can feel, right? And that their mind is going to try to conclude what that means, right? Does it mean you're not interested in me anymore? Does it mean you're going to go become a monk? Does it mean any of these things? And sometimes just addressing those practicalities with them and not just being too non-dual about it and being like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. No one knows what anything's going to happen. It's all just, you know, there's just eternity, you know, that's not going to be really helpful. Instead, just say, you know, I don't really have any inclination to become a monk. I don't have, I still love you. Like, the simple things can be very reassuring to them. And as Zubin said, you know, just be patient, please. It is a shift in me, you know, and try to be honest with to the degree you can. Like, I can feel something about my identity just changing, and it's about suffering. I used to suffer more, now it's less, or, you know, whatever's going on, just try to be honest about it. But there's also a component of this I can't explain. It's very hard to talk about it, but it's instinctual. But nothing about it is fundamentally changing the practicalities of our relationship, in the sense that it doesn't make me want to leave or anything, but I know it does change the way I come across. So those sort of statements of empathy can be really helpful. Like, I understand it's the way I may act or respond is changing, but it's nothing personal. It's just something restructuring in myself. And my instinct is that our relationship will be better for it in the long run. But it'll be an adjustment period, maybe. That's what I would say. Something like that. Keep it reasonably simple and keep communication channels open.
Yeah. I definitely strive to do that. I think one of the things that has kind of triggered some of my wife's response is that I don't feel like doing some of the things I used to. That
can be challenging too, where, like, you know, maybe just as an example, maybe we used to go gambling together, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't really care to do that anymore. So things like that can, and that is, you know, that's the compromise of any relationship. Like, maybe you still do a little bit because they want to, but then they can, you know, you can take turns doing other things or whatever. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. Like, the things you had in common, suddenly your end of the bargain is like, it's just not there for you. And it's like, how authentic do I want to be? Do I want to just go along because that's what we used to do, even though it doesn't feel relevant to me anymore? Or do I kind of communicate that and stop doing it? Or, so you got to kind of juggle that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I have the same thing with my boys. You know, they see with that, Dad, you know, you used to like to do these things, and so now, you know, I'm changing. It's a scary thing in a way, but, you know, hearing somebody tell me it's normal, you're gonna feel that, and it'll pay.
Yeah. Okay. And always be a little open to like what might replace it. So maybe you don't do this thing with your boys anymore, but maybe all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe we could do a different kind of thing together that would be maybe more authentic to all of us, or maybe not. But being open-minded to other things that might sort of feel more relevant when other things have fallen away. You never know what could show up.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your question. It's something we all have to work through, all of us, in one way or another. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go to, thank you. Okay. I think we can get the rest of these. We may take turns. Maybe Zubin and I'll take turns and be quicker. Diego.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Hi. So lately I started to do more like longer meditation sessions, going like for somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes, because I realized, so analytical as I am, it's like I was doing like 15 minutes and then I was like, nah, this is not going anywhere. And then I think it was one day accidentally was like on my bed and then, doing some meditation, and then it went over and I'm like, well, it looks like I needed that time like to settle down first and then go deeper, right? And then I realized that. So I started to do like 40, 45 minutes sessions, I would say, with a couple of things. First, like I feel like it's very much like here, like to the point where it gets tight. It's like I feel like something here that is like, hard for some reason. And then I realized maybe it's like I'm too tense, and then I try to, relax a little bit, and it might go away, but then it comes back, immediately it comes back. So it's very much like here, to the point where when I finish, I'm so exhausted, like 45 minutes, and I'm like, I could have gone more because it was good, but then the alarm, because I won't have the sense of the time, and then but I'm so tired, right? Mm-hmm. That is one. And then the second one is very aligned to what Zubin was saying, is like, when I get to like, maybe after 25, 30 minutes, it gets so deep, maybe, that I'm not sure if it's something that I'm creating out of this. It's like, am I imagining this? What is going on? Is this a thought or is it not a thought, right? Is it that or is it not? It's like, I can't realize what is real from what is not real at some point. And sometimes I realize it, now that was daydreaming, I'm here, right? But some other times it's like, I'm conscious enough to say, is that real or is it not? I can't realize that.
Yeah.
Even the last couple of times, not the last couple of times, but it happened twice that I got this, and you read my message saying I got this fear coming in twice, like all of a sudden the fear. And then of course my mind goes to the manual. It's like, oh, maybe this is the fear barrier, right? And so I try to put it somewhere to say, I know this, right? This is the fear barrier. Yep. So I might be closed and I might let go, or who am I? It's like, get it, because this is your possibility of getting it. And it goes away. And one of these 2 times, it's like, it was like open all of a sudden. There was nothing. Mm-hmm. After that fear, there was nothing.
Yeah.
But then again, the mind is like, is this it or is it not? And then alarm, and then back to normal, right? Like, again, thoughts, daydreaming, come back, stay here, go, come back, try to integrate that into everyday life. So
here's the thing. So because I know you and I know what you've been going through for a couple of years and stuff. Your big barrier has just been the intellect. It's just been completely holding on with intellect. But the reason I'm saying that is I want to congratulate you, because the first 2 things you said are showing me that you're finally going beyond intellect. The first one is that you intuitively knew to meditate longer. You weren't meditating long enough because your mind didn't want you to, because it didn't want to let go. 15 minutes, the mind can hold on for 15 minutes easily. But when you start losing track of time and you sit there for 30 or 40, 45 minutes, your mind's going to calm down. It has to. That's number one. That's great. Your intuition is leading you into more samadhi, more deep meditation, more stillness. That's great. Trust it. That's the feminine aspect of this that you really need to attune with. The second thing I want to say is, when you are starting to move beyond the grip of thought, you're feeling that like, whoa, wait, where am I? I want to grab on. I need to know where I am. That's a good thing. You need to feel that. And then you need to learn that's just the experience of letting go of thought. And then just keep letting go. Just let it just keep moving beyond. You did go through, it sounds like, a fear barrier too. And that can happen. It doesn't have to. Sometimes it happens multiple times. But as you described, often right beyond that, it just gets very calm. But as I always tell people, even then, that's not awakening. The mind is calmed, but it'll still use any trick it can. So if it subtly gets you a little thought that says, oh, hey, let's think about this some. And then you're like, oh, now I'm mad at that thought. Now you're thinking about that thought. And it's just another thought though. is literally just another thought. At that
Yeah.
stage, you can recognize that is one fucking thought. Let it go. Go right back to
Yeah.
that clarity. You're moving right up onto this. You're right. You're approaching what you've been working for all this time, but now it's just about letting go. There's no technique to this. Do what you're doing. Meditate for 45 minutes. Do the stuff you're doing. But it's just a sort of letting go. But be alert to those thoughts. Don't let yourself get caught. The moment something goes, is it or isn't it? That's one thought. Quietude. Just keep alert, like looking for the next thought that could possibly arise until it just gets so quiet. And then the quietude is its own answer. It's its own reward. Don't worry about awakening. Awakening at that point is a thought as well. Just stay with that quietude.
Gotcha.
You're right up. You're doing what you've been working toward for 2 years now. So good for you.
Thank you.
ZDogg?
No, perfect. I'll just say I let my intuition guide meditation, and it ended up extending to about an hour. And my old mind would have said, oh, hell no, I don't even have an hour to spare. And you just find that listening to that intuition is the smartest thing to do.
Yep. I went through a phase for myself, even after awakening, where the energy was just so much and the tension, and like I just knew I needed to meditate more. And it was weird because I didn't even notice I was fighting it for like several months. And all of a sudden it just dawned on me like, fuck, I need to meditate a lot more. And then I started meditating like an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And that was just what worked for me at the time. And it was like the perfect shift I needed. It would just change everything energetically. I just needed more space. I needed more time outside of the mind. Now, the other thing I wanted to add just very briefly is when you said you feel all this pressure up here, that's very, very normal. When you really start to sit and you really disidentify from thought, there's a shit ton of energy that's bound into thought all the time. And this is where you start, if you don't like the terminology about energy, this is where you start realizing it's actually really true. It's mental energy, and it gets released in your head, and it feels like pressure.
Yeah.
Yep. So what you can do is learn, even after that meditation, how to get it back down in your body and down into the ground and into the earth. So whether it's laying on the ground, whether it's actually imagining a golden liquid just slowly moving down the back of your spine, all the way down through your hips, through your legs, to the floor. Like that's an old Zen master talked about this, but that's one technique. Go take a bath, do breathing exercises to put your attention in your breath and pull that energy down into your body. It wants to go to ground. That energy has been stuck up here for years. It wants to actually find its way down. But it will just get circling up in there if you release it from thought and don't do anything else. So learning to find some kind of physical modality to let that energy get back down to ground will be helpful.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Zubin.
Let's go to Thomas.
Hey there, Angelo and Zubin.
Hey.
Question about meditation. I'm a long-term meditator for 40 years. And I haven't really had any deep experiences in meditation. I had an accident when I was about 23 and I broke my legs and my kneecap. So I sit on a chair, just it's not comfortable to sit on a zafu. And I know, like I've read in 3 Pillars of Zen about Kensho at the end of the book, like you referred to, and enlightenment experiences that people have had, and there does seem to be with some people an awakening through, like, say, a sesshin or a series of sesshins. The idea for me of doing a sesshin is like agony. It's like, what is the worst thing I could do? Attend a sesshin. And I'm a member of a little zendo in Sonoma County, and I can meditate fine for like 30 minutes. The style I do is eyes open, because that's how I learned, and really staying alert. And obviously that kind of comes and goes, and I'll find myself drifting away. But at the same time, for many years, I've been more of like a swimmer and a runner and a cycler. And I've found those activities more sort of transcendent. So I did want to check with you, like the silent retreat that I did with you a month ago. That was much different than a sesshin, right? A sesshin, obviously, you're meditating for 8 hours a day. You're not having breaks. You're not reading poetry, any of that stuff. So what would you say? It's according to each individual?
Zubin, what's your experience with prolonged meditation and these issues?
The more scared you are of doing it, actually, the more likely it is to blow your mind in a way that you couldn't predict. And
that's what I was afraid you were going to say.
I was so resistant, brother. And look, I've been doing this thing kind of in some form for over a decade, and I resisted doing the silent retreat again and again and again because of all the excuses that I had. I have chronic neck pain, and this and that. I can't sit still, and just really gritted my teeth and went to the first one. And you just can't know what will happen. But I will say that what happened for me, anyways, was it was transformative and beyond anything I could have imagined with the intellect or with the mind. And any of those objections that did arise were meditation objects just waiting to happen. So you could just dive attention into the thought or the discomfort itself and see what happens. And I can't tell you what happens because it'll be different for everything, but it is absolutely a transformative practice in and of itself. So that's just my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add a couple things. What he said is what I would recommend, and that is, give it a shot, but with a couple caveats, and that is a sesshin specifically. Yeah, it's difficult, not just because of the prolonged meditation, but because they often expect you to sit in traditional Zen postures, and it is quite painful. I find that's not actually necessary at all. When I started doing retreats at my home with people, people are laying down to meditate and all this, and I didn't care. I didn't tell them to do this or that. I would just say try to stay alert, try to stay awake, but people lay down, they sit in chairs, they sit. I don't care how people sit. And it turns out they do just fine. They wake up, they do just fine. So I love Zen. I love many aspects of Zen. I love Mu, Shikantai. I love the tradition of it, but I actually disagree with the obsession with posture. I just don't think it's necessary. So what I would say is, based on what Zubin said, if part of you really wants to do it, take up the challenge, but consider a retreat that's not a Zen retreat, for instance, or, something where you have much more latitude on posture, especially if you have a knee injury, it can be really difficult to sit that way. And maybe, or some Zen places will let you sit in a chair to, kind of feel that out. But.
And in your experience, what is it that happens in the long meditation?
You can't hide from yourself. You can't, the amount of distraction that we engage in is, you can't even become aware. You can become partially aware of it, but you can't become fully aware of it until you take yourself out of the normal ways we distract ourselves constantly. And one of them is talking to people. You don't realize how much you actually use communication to kind of keep yourself slightly asleep or slightly distracted or whatever. So yeah, you're just put into an environment where all of your cues are just not there. Your usual distractions are not there. Your usual ways of running from yourself or your emotions are just not there. And it's very hard to actually know that until you do it. That's probably the biggest thing I would say about it. Zubin, do you agree with that? Do you think that's?
Yeah, it's absolutely indescribable, the kind of confrontation you have with your own shit on a retreat. And I can't overemphasize what Angela is saying about the losing the distractions and the general intention of going and sitting with other people who share that intention. There's a kind of an energy that's produced in Zen, they call it jiriki, this kind of meditative concentration that it's so hard to reproduce at home sitting. Even I've meditated at home for 5 and 6 hours a day with little breaks in between, and I've never regenerated the kind of concentration that you can get in like half a day at a retreat with that shared intention. There's just something there. So yeah, that's my take.
All right, thank you. I'll give it a try.
Cool. Thanks for your question. All right, we have a little bit of time. I'm not sure we can get to everybody, but let me pick some people here. Let's go to Emil.
Okay. Hi.
Hey.
So I have a question, because I always feel, or at the moment for the past few months, I felt really attached to the idea of awakening and kind of obsessed with it. And then sometimes I think I'm a bit, jealous even of other people's experiences of some sort of awakening. And I have a strong sense of FOMO, fear of missing out. And I think I'm like always seeking. I feel like a craving for some sort of words of wisdom, whether it's through a book or a video or practice. Because if I do it, then I feel a subtle sense of relief or strong relief. But I feel this is sometimes it's an overwhelming amount of seeking, and it's like I'm addicted to it. And then at the same time, I'm not sure if it's actually negative amount of seeking or if it's just something I need to experience. So because I'm usually an all or nothing kind of person, I usually go all in or not at all.
I can tell.
So what is this? Like, I'm not sure if it's actually just okay and I should just go through it, or if it's something I should try to calm down.
Nope. It's music to my ears. So when you say you have FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And when you say that you get jealous, like you wish you had what someone else has, you get jealous of that. I'll address the fear of missing out. You are missing out on something, but it's not out there. What you're missing out on, what you want, is already in your experience right now. What you want, what you're missing through an activity of mind is already you're literally looking at it right now. It has never left you, can't leave you, never gone anywhere. So if a thought says, that guy had it, that girl had it, that person had it, why don't I have it? That is only a thought. That's actually trying to take you away from it. FOMO isn't new. When you started doing this, when you took up this spiritual investigation, the seeking and the FOMO aren't new. You just renamed them. They're already there. They are a movement of mind that goes all day long from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, that keeps seeking and seeking and seeking. It's running from, it doesn't even care what it seeks, by the way. It's running from what's here right now all the time, never could not be here. This is the biggest joke in the universe. It's the biggest joke in the universe because what you're seeking is already there. So you're in a really, really good place, and the seeking energy has to burn itself out. So it's totally fine. What you'll see, the more you hear this message I'm telling you that it's already here, the more you'll realize how uncomfortable the seeking is, how useless the seeking is, but most importantly, the fact that you can't control it. It will burn itself out. But utilize it. If it's there, turn it back on its source. Make it seek what's here right now. What's here right now that's undeniable? That's a good question, right? What's here right now that is not a thought? Turn the seeking back onto its source. Turn it back into its root. Again and again and again and again. If you need to name it moo, name it moo. What is moo? What is moo? There's no thought answer to that. Just you can just completely ignore the mind if possible, because it's not going to get you there. Nothing will get you back here.
Yeah.
Nothing will get you back here. Never left. Yeah. So just keep that going. Fire it up. Fire that seeking up and turn it back onto its source. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
You're in a good place. It's not comfortable. I know. I know it's not comfortable. I know it.
No, it's not.
But you're in a good place.
Okay.
Cool. Zubin.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Yeah. Anything I'd say would just make you seek more. That's perfect.
Okay, let's go to Lynn.
What's good? The shutting down will start.
Hi, thank you. Just probably, hopefully quickly, I've been having trouble since April focusing on work. And it's affecting my finances. I'm not worried, which is unusual compared to how I used to be. I'm not anxious. Everything keeps working out, but it's slim and overdue bills, or a lot of juggling going on. I start out every day saying, okay, today I'm going to work a full day and my mind doesn't want to do anything but this.
Mhm.
And it happened again today. Every day I went another day. And this has been going on since April. And all my credit cards are maxed out, trying to keep up. And I can't decide. I used to be a workhorse, a workaholic, I could force myself. I could beat myself like a mule and make myself work. I didn't like it, but that's what I learned in my life about how to focus. I've been sort of open all my life, so I kind of had to do that to stay in a direction. And then I stopped having to do that, and it was just natural focus. But now, since the big glimpse in June, I don't want to be anywhere else. And I know other people are working.
I would say don't worry about what other people are doing at all. It's just you're off the map now. It's not going to help. It's not going to help to take a model from anyone, including a monastic or anyone. It doesn't.
You're doing really well.
Yeah.
I mean,
me?
Yeah. It just seems like
sometimes people say
because
things
of the
like that. I'm like,
discipline.
you don't want my life necessarily.
Well, that's true.
You might not want to do what I do. But you can't. You have your life. So my point is just my sense is taking reference from others is probably not going to help you here. Whether you should.
I'm accessing my freedom.
Yeah.
Directly for the first time in my life. I want to live, and I want to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
mean,
want to beat myself.
Yeah. Don't beat yourself up over this. Short of, do you have some dependents you need to take care of, like children or something right now?
No, I have freed myself, and I've worked it out with my husband. I've gone through these things other people are talking about, and it's harmonious.
Yeah, I can't give you practical advice on this because my sense is you're in a very good place. And you pointed out exactly the issue, and that was your identity was tied around work. And that's got to go at some point in one way or another. It may come back in a totally different form, maybe completely different later on, who knows? But I know people, I have friends who went through what you're going through. Lisa Carnes is a good example. She was a playwright. She had written a successful play. She had an opening, all this, and all that went down the drain. She gave her whole life to this. It worked for her. I can't tell you to do that. I'm just saying it does happen for some people, and everyone's circumstances are so different. So it's so hard for me to give you advice, but it sounds like at least a significant part of you trusts this.
I do trust it completely, actually.
Yeah.
I just don't wanted to make sure I'm not fooling myself.
You don't sound like you are to me, but that's just my opinion.
But who knows?
But who knows? You don't sound like you sound pretty congruent to me. How about you, Zubin?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you're in a place where you're trusting your instinct now, but your mind is second guessing a little bit in the background because there's still that hook of identity that's saying, I am the worker, I'm the one who does this. If I don't do this, what am I? I go through a lot of that myself, honestly. I make less and less videos, the less interested I am in doing things just to do them, and the more interested I am in just this. So I'm with you.
Okay. Thank you so much, both of you.
I wish you peace. It sounds like you're definitely experiencing a lot of peace now, which is great.
Yes, thank you so much. And I appreciate
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up. Sorry, we missed a few people. If you remind us, we can start with you next time. But thank you, everyone. We went through a lot of questions, and very good questions, and different levels of questions. What a great couple hours this was. And thank you so much, Zubin, for coming along. I really appreciate it. And you did awesome, man.
Dude, I feel like I got more out of this than anyone else. This is great. I love it. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. I always feel the same way too. People are like, oh, thank you so much. I'm like, I love hearing how people wake up because they teach me so much, and just feeling people's hearts that are so attuned to this. It's awesome. Yeah. So thank you, everyone.